Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Menis and I'm with PrivSec Global. Welcome, wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon or good evening. I'm delighted to be your anchor here for this next panel. I just want to do a few thank yous. Thank you to our headline sponsor, Microsoft. Thank you to our premier sponsor, OneTrust, and also our headline media partner, The Wall Street Journal. As I said on the last one, explore the platform by using the menu bar on the left. Lots of exciting things to explore, find, and educate yourself on. Register for the events. Even if you're not attending, it's useful for you to register for them. Check out the sponsor booths throughout the day. They're all time scaled out if you click on that tab. And follow us on social media and comment with the hashtag PrivSecGlobal. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce the host of this next panel discussion, which is Tripti Dar, who is a partner with Reiner Legal LLP. The panel is entitled The Biggest Challenges for Indian Data Protection Professionals in 2021, and the panel is sponsored by Privacy Culture. Over to you, Tripti.
Thanks, Andrew. Hello, everyone. Today, I'm delighted to be hosting a panel which is being which has panelists that are going to offer their very valuable opinion, and I will take the opportunity now to introduce them one by one. Firstly, we have Navi joining us. He's the Executive Chairman at the Foundation of Data Protection Professionals, FDPPI, in India. Secondly, we have Abhik Chaudhary, who works in the area and takes care of digital transformation, governance, policy, security, privacy, GRC architecture, both consulting and research at Tata Consultancy Services. And lastly, we've been joined by Meenal Maheshwari Shah, who is the lead legal counsel for global transactions, contracts, and privacy at ESA. A very warm welcome to all of you. And we are really delighted to have you on the panel today. And I think this is an opportune time to kickstart the conversation. My first question to all of you would be the same, and I would ask you to give your views one by one. Firstly, my question to you, Abhik. What, as per you, are the biggest challenges for the Indian data protection professionals in 2021? Please give us your views.
So, hello everyone. So, going by this question from Tripti. First of all, we are in the current pandemic state where digital is in a flux. Why? Because the rate of digital adoption, because of moving from the physical and brick and mortar stores to the virtual mode of operations and business, the digital adoption by the end users or the customers is on a rapid pace. Along with that, the digital adoption and transformation journey of the businesses is also on a rapid pace. And considering both these aspects, we are also getting a lot of issues in terms of trustworthiness of digital that covers security and privacy as key aspects. The latest report from World Economic Forum says that the mistrust in digital technologies is high and rising. And as per the Poneman Institute's report, the cost of data breach, the average cost, is now at $2 million US, and that has been a rise by about 9.4% year on year. In this perspective, in order to provide the trustworthiness in digital offerings and services for the end users, we are also looking at the regulatory landscape of India that is becoming very vital. And we have the Personal Data Protection Bill, which is already into the second level of review and currently with the Joint Parliamentary Committee. Along with that, we are also getting a non-personal data related governance framework from the Committee of Experts. So this combined scenario is creating a lot of challenges from the technology perspective of digital as well as the compliance perspective of digital in order to gain the trust from the end users as well as the stakeholders covering the total landscape. So that is in brief about the current challenges, and as we discuss further, I can give some more examples.
Sure. Meena, would you like to tell us what, as per you, are the challenges that Indian professionals will face in 2021. I know you have some very fascinating views on this.
Thank you, Tripti. Thank you, everyone who's joined us on the panel. A very warm welcome for your time. Tripti, and I think the main issue that data privacy professionals will face in India is to build a privacy culture in India inside the organization. Firstly, convincing the promoters to spend on compliance for a topic like privacy, which is still really under the rugs and not spoken of. And even if it is spoken of, is not taken seriously. It's just, it's the last thing on everyone's mind. So I think that is going to be a really challenging point that all data privacy professionals will have to deal with. Also, data is a very emotional subject in India, right? It is linked to trust. So if data is shared with you, whether it is necessary for your job or not, it sort of shows that, the company trusts you. And so when that data will only be shared on a need-based situation, I think a lot of awareness will have to be created amongst the employees to educate them as to why it is so being done, and that it should not be uh, treated as a trust issue. And for that, the main thing that anyone can do is train their employees and raise awareness amongst the employees of the concept of privacy. The organization is planning to implement privacy in the organization so that there is no turmoil at all when the implementation stage arises. And another thing is that, to get budget for the data privacy professionals from their company to implement the process, that is going to be a challenge because, as I said, it is the last thing on the promoter's mind. So a very real conversation between the data professionals and the promoters and the board is, and not one, maybe many conversations are required to convince them, to make them understand the importance of this concept. The third and the last one is that many concepts that exist in the new PB, which is the Personal Data Protection Bill of 2019, that are some of the features that are present in that bill are untested because they are not there already in the personal data protection laws of many countries. So it is left for the data privacy professionals to find out what they really mean and interpret it. Like, for example, the concept that in India, the data collector is called a data fiduciary, right? So now a relationship, along with a contractual relationship, a relationship of trust is also created. So now this would mean that there's an additional duty that has been cast upon the data collector, which is to be the trustee, and so they have to have an additional duty of care. Like that, there are many other concepts like guardian data fiduciary that has been added, which is the data fiduciary who deals in the data of children. So now there's a separate category that has been created for children's data process. The companies that will process or collect the data of children, and they are not allowed to profile the data at all. So this is another concept that we'll see how it will work out. Then a compulsory registration, it seems like, is expected of the privacy by design policy, and a certificate will have to be procured from the DPA. While the words are may, it looks like it is the intent is shall. And if every organization has to submit a privacy by a design policy with the DPA, I think it's a task, and then to get it approved to get a certificate. Then there is an exception for sandbox, which is any artificial intelligence or machine learning new technology. If is created by any company, then these companies can ask for an exemption from the certain provisions of the new Data Protection Act bill as of now. So so these are really new concepts. Similarly, the DTS, the Data Trust Score, that is embodied, which auditors have to now give a rating. So on what basis will they give the rating? Because this has not been tested in any other country. And on top of everything, the data professionals of India do not only have to know about the Indian PDPA, but multiple laws, because the Indian websites or the businesses are going to be present in every country. So to deal with multiple laws where citizens of various countries are involved would mean that you need to be proficient, either proficient in the laws of all the countries where your company's website is available and business is done in those countries, or it would mean that you have contacts there and then you spend on the local councils of that country. So yes, there are multiple challenges. I've just named a few, but it is going to be a very, very interesting era that we are entering into.
Absolutely, Meenal, absolutely. Very well put. Now my question would be to Navi. With your rich experience, sir, can you please tell us what, as per you, are the challenges that the professions will face? Thank you.
Thank you, and good day for all of you. So I actually look at three major types of, you can say, challenges. One is like in every other country, when a new law of these proportions, which is so disruptive on the existing system, is used, we will have a resistance to change. This resistance to change will basically be for the corporates. And of course, for the people also, in India, of course, we have talked about the culture not being so respectful of the privacy. So that will affect this, you can say, adoption to the new privacy regime. And even in the industry, if you look at it, the attitude of compliance is not well entrenched. Most of the time, we say that, okay, let us see what happens. We will handle it when the crisis arises, kind of a thing. Compliance as a proactive measure is not very much in vogue, even in very large, big companies with necessary resources. And there is a general perception that enforcement is always weak, so we can handle the situation. We talked about data breach cost and other things in India. The cost comes only when the data subject actually claims some compensation. I don't know whether in India we will be really having that much of value attached to it. This is one aspect. The second most important aspect for Indian professionals is, for implementing this Indian PDPB, they need to unlearn their current GDPR understanding, because GDPR has been so overwhelming in creating a sort of an impression amongst the professionals that if anybody talks of privacy today, a law today, data protection law, they only look at GDPR. Now, PDPB is not going to be same, because as Meenal has explained, there are several things which are different from GDPR. But if we don't recognize this, we will be implementing measures, or perhaps we will be feeling that we are already GDPR compliant, so we are compliant with PDPB, and that is one of the pitfalls which companies need to avoid. Similarly, when it comes to compliance frameworks, people are used to looking at ISO as the complete solution, and ISO 27701, people will say, I am certified for 27701, so I can forget everything else. Remember, this is not going to happen in India. As again pointed out by Meenal, Indian companies are like hub of a data processing. We simultaneously handle several countries' personal data. So we have to be compliant with these multiple laws. It is not possible to have one particular framework. We need to look at different things. But the positive thing is that we already have Personal Data Protection Standard of India, PDPSI, which we are working on as a single framework for multiple laws. And we have, of course, done a lot of work before the act comes, so we are ready. Challenges are there, but as professionals, we have to see how we meet those challenges. So all these three challenges of resistance to change, this unlearning of GDPR, and this multiple compliance management, India is already getting ready, at least at our level, professional level, as consultancy level, we are ready. If companies are ready to take the consultancy, perhaps they will also be able to get themselves ready. Okay. So more questions, if it is there, we will answer that. Okay.
Thank you. These were great insights. Abhi, my next question to you is, you spoke about the challenges that the professionals face. How do you propose that these challenges can be resolved? What would your points be? And any key takeaways that the professionals should take in mind?
Yeah. So just taking cue from Navi, as he said that compliance is a challenge because we use this statement, if you don't like a compliance, try non-compliance. So, and businesses don't want to take that approach definitely because of the huge penalties, which are also recommended in our personal data protection bill and will be enacted in next year. And from that perspective also, we are trying to adopt standards which can help us as a technologist or from the compliance perspective to ensure data protection from the end user perspective. Consider that users are at the core of all these services, whether it is from the government or from the businesses. So to do that, we have to take a three-pronged approach. The first approach is to understand the current state. Like where are we right now in terms of our enterprise architecture design, in terms of where we are capturing any personal data of the end user, why we are doing it, and are we doing it with proper consent or not, and whether it is purpose limited, that is whether we are only taking that much of personal data as required or necessary for the purpose for which it has been taken. To add to it, from the security perspective, whether we are storing and keeping that personal data completely in a sanctity mode whereby it is not getting breached or also shared with third parties without consent of the end user. So that is what I call privacy inquisitive analysis. That is the first step. That is what we have to take as an approach from the legal perspective, from the technology perspective also. So from that perspective, we will try to understand where are the gaps. If there are gaps in terms of not meeting the end user needs in terms of this personal data protection, then we have to do the next step, which is privacy impact assessment, to understand what are the risks coming out where we have not maintained or managed those gaps in terms of personal data protection. From that assessment, we will be able to design or devise the strategies to go for a state transition from the current state to the desired state in terms of our services as well as product designs. So this is the three-pronged approach which all of us have to take, and this is a proactive approach. We should not wait when our data protection bills, whether it is personal data protection bill or any non-personal data related protection bill or act, which will get enacted, and then only we'll take the reactive mode of protecting the data. So definitely this can be done right at this moment by all of us in the industry as well as in the governments, considering the public digital services also. So this is a three-pronged approach. Along with that, the necessary needs which are coming up from the recommendations of the committee of experts who have defined the non-personal data protection governance framework. They are giving the recommendations that there is sensitive personal data definition in the personal data protection bill. If that kind of data is anonymized, then it can be treated as non-personal data. So this is a very kind of critical perspective of data protection in Indian context, whereby any personal data, sensitive personal data that is anonymized can be treated as non-personal data. This is a recommendation. So in that case, this non-personal data can also need the necessary precautions and the security and privacy perspectives which has been provided to the personal data which is not anonymized. So this is becoming very vital for us as technologies also in terms of privacy enhancing technologies. What type of algorithms we will be using to create this anonymized version of personal data. And we have to also take care that in no way this anonymized data can be or de-anonymized again to the previous version of sensitive personal data. Because if that happens, then again business or the service and product providers are also at risk in terms of breach of data protection if that happens. And all the ownership of personal data and anonymized personal data, which is becoming non-personal data, will be owned by the data principal who has provided that personal data. So equal consent scenario has to be designed again for non-personal data, and we cannot say that we have received consent for the sensitive personal data for use for a business purpose. So once we anonymize it, we can just go ahead and use it. No, that is not the recommendation from this committee. So all these challenges, as I said, in that three-step process, if we take it, considering the legal and regulatory perspectives, considering the users at the core, and considering the necessary technological needs, then we can meet or mitigate these risks. That is my take.
Thanks, Rabi. Very well summarized. Very well summarized. Meenal, my question is to you. How do you propose to address the challenges that you had posed? Say, for instance, the budgetary challenges and the challenges about multiple jurisdictions that one has to accede to. So how should privacy professionals accordingly prepare themselves? We also have some questions on these lines that have been asked by our viewers as well. So it will be great if we can get some answers.
Sure. Given that privacy laws are extraterritorial in nature, right? So, and all businesses mostly, at least all businesses that work through internet are present globally in many, many nations. It is very important to build a system within your organization where you are able to keep track of common compliances across nations and then have a tracker for compliances that are then nation specific and not present in other jurisdictions. So it is important to ensure that you have trackers or you have standards that you can follow, so that you do not miss any compliances and you keep that up to date. Now, it's a very, I know it's very easy to say this, and it's very difficult to sort of adopt this. And that's why many times there are external organizations whose main work is only this. So you can take support from these consultations and adopt any standards, because there are now many organizations which are building these standards. For example, one of them is FDPPA, and Navi sir is here, and which are putting together these compliances of multi-jurisdictional privacy compliances that are required across the globe. So if you follow such standards, you will make your life a little easier. And of course, the second thing is to spend on your resources. In the sense, you need to build your resources, internal resources, and train them in this field of privacy at a very nascent stage. Because once the bill is there, it will be too much work to operationalize. So there will be very less time left for the professionals to be ready to implement something like that. So it's very important to act early. It is very important to understand how you will comply, whether you're going to build internal compliances and have local partners everywhere to comply, or you will adopt standards and take help of consultants. You need to figure these things out. And on the cost and getting the budget, I think the most useful method that I have found is when you're talking to business people, they understand numbers. So I think what you need to familiarize them with is the penalties that may be levied, because the legal compliances and what has to be done and what are the steps that are supposed to be taken, these are not things that interest the business teams many a times. So if you tell them that what are the pitfalls of not complying and what are the penalties in various nations, and you can add up those penalties that are there in every nation. Imagine 30 nations coming down on you in one go. I mean, it is a very, very difficult situation for any company. So if you speak to your business in the language that they understand and they sort of appreciate, I think that's how you can get their focus at least, and start talking about this. So and of course the third and the very third and the last thing that needs to be done is to not only build data privacy professionals, but get them to talk to employees and build a privacy culture. You need to have every every employee's skin in the game, because only then privacy can be achieved. It cannot be achieved just by one or two professionals. You know, every employee has to be involved. Every employee who can get any information from the outside world also has to be informed, along with your IT team, which will which should of course ensure that nothing can be saved on your local drives and everything is up and running on a common common disk of the company, so that no employees are able to retain any data in their hard disks, because companies can be liable even for that. So these are the three steps that I think are, there are multiple steps that have to be followed, but these three should be on the top tasks that any company should have. And I think this will definitely help a lot from, you know, sort of avoiding any penalties that come your way and last minute glitches that will come once this bill becomes an act.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for your views. Navi sir, we would now want to hear the resolutions that you would like to propose to the challenges that you just mentioned. Please.
See, basically, as I told you, the challenges which are before us, one of which is this multiple loss.
Tripti,
Fortunately,
okay.
there are technical measures which can be used for this.
I could not hear you.
You are able to hear me?
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, see, we have a combination of, say, pseudonymization, proper data classification, and then the normal data protection tools such as access control and encryption. If they are combined together properly in a new framework, I'm saying that the old frameworks which we have been using for technical security of information, which was CIA principle. Now we have to add something to the CIA principle of information security, which is the privacy aspect. And in that privacy aspect, different laws seem to say something different. And we are all used to actually combining the data from multiple countries and putting it in one single dump. And that is what is creating us a problem. And we can correct those challenges if there is, of course, this we are talking of a re-architecturing of the technology itself. So that is one of the issues. And some of these culture issues, and also India has got the problem of, let us say, a lower education of the data principles and the play of multiple languages. So when we are having a privacy notice, putting it in different languages in a manner in which people will understand and give an informed consent, that itself is a challenge. Fortunately, the PDPB has made a provision for an intermediary called the consent manager, who will take over a lot of these responsibilities and bridge the gap between the uneducated, less informed data principle and the data hungry data fiduciaries who would like to get as much of information as possible and perhaps put everything in the consent, whether it is required or not, and then use it for whatever purpose they want. So this consent manager system is one of the innovations which this act has provided. And these other challenges which I told you about, this multiple country data and other things, that we have to build in our information security framework. That is what I am saying, personal data protection standard of India. We have built all these things, including a distributed control for the management of personal data. See, I don't believe in one DPO being able to manage the personal data challenges of a company which has got say 5,000 employees, 10,000 employees. We have got in India companies with 1 lakh employees also. So how can one DPO, and also they are all spread over multiple locations. And today in the COVID kind of situation, 10,000 employees are in 10,000 different locations. It's not even 2-3 locations. So these challenges, we will not be practical if we say one CISO or one DPO will be able to work on this. So we are trying to suggest to the companies to adopt a distributed model of implementation. Fortunately, PDPB is structured in such a manner that when the data protection authority comes in, there will be a lot of, you can say, freedom for the data protection authority to develop codes and practices. And therefore, whatever we are dreaming today as this can be done or something like that, today, as of today, it is a suggestion from professionals. But whether it will become a reality, it depends. See, we are also going to adopt this annual data audit as a mandatory provision, which is going to put all these companies on a tight leash. Once in a year, just as you do statutory financial audit, you have to do a data audit. And that has to be done by an external data auditor who will also provide you a score called DTS, Data Trust Score, which the company is supposed to publish in its annual report, perhaps in the documents they submit to the data protection authority, and must be also in the shareholders information in the annual report. I think this is very fascinating. There are controls inbuilt in the PDPB. As I told you, this DTS, external data auditor, coming and checking your data audit, data compliance readiness, not the financial kind of a thing, not the CIA principle. He is only going to come and check how are you compliant with the data protection regulations. So I think there are inbuilt controls in the act. Rest of it, we as a professional has to build. Okay, so there are a few questions, interesting questions already coming up. If you want, we can take it up now or we can take it up later.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We'll just take them up right now. So the first question, and I keep it open for the panel to answer, is about this recent inclusion that has been mulled over or proposed, that the personal data protection bill should also include non-personal data. This is some of the news that is coming, that the JPC is apparently saying.
Can I clarify on this? See, this has not
Please.
come from the JPC. It has come from the media. It has come from people who want to delay this PDPB further, and they want to actually bring in some new concept. Actually, Chris Gopalakrishna committee has made suggestions, and we will develop that non-personal data protection regulation in due course. We have to wait for at least another 2 years, I think, for that legislation to come, because that will be one of the first legislations of that type anywhere else in the world also. We will not have a GDPR or something to guide us. See, what I think Mr. Abik also was mentioning was regarding this anonymization. Okay. See, we have built a very clear distinction between the scope of Personal Data Protection Act and the current Information Technology Act and the proposed Non-Personal Data Protection Act. All these three legislations will be prevalent after some time. See, whatever information is having an identifiable personal information, that will come under the provisions of Personal Data Protection Act. So collection, processing, disclosure, everything will come under that. Now, whatever is not identifiable to an individual, either because that information was originally a non-personal information, it could be a corporate information, it could be some environmental information, nothing to do with individuals, that information plus a personal information which is anonymized into an anonymized information, they form the data set which we can call as non-personal data. Now, protection of non-personal data is already covered under Information Technology Act 2000, amended from time to time. We don't require another Data Protection Act for non-personal data. But what Chris Gopalakrishna committee has suggested is, a governance regulation so that people can unlock the value in this non-personal data. So what happens when we do anonymization is companies which have a large amount of data of personal nature, by anonymizing, they will create a set of non-personal data which is raw material on which they can encash financial benefits without affecting the privacy of any person. So that is how personal data and non-personal data will be complementing each other. And on the background, Information Technology Act will try to protect all kinds of data. There will be some overlap between Personal Data Protection Act and ITA 2000, at least in the case of de-anonymization. See, de-anonymization is an offense under Personal Data Protection Act. See, when we talk of anonymization, we are not talking of de-identification. De-identification is reversible. Anonymization is by definition irreversible. Now, something which is made irreversible, there are always technology brains who can try to re-anonymize, re-identify it, just like any encryption. The best encryption we have, somebody may be able to break that encryption. That is addressed through the crimes. So crime, both under Information Technology Act as well as under the de-anonymization rule under the Personal Data Protection Act, will address the deterrence for this, you can say, re-identification of an anonymized data. But normally, the DPA is going to come up with a standard, and if you follow that standard of anonymization, perhaps nearly 99.99% you should not be able to re-anonymize it. But if you can still do it by combining information available from various sources, that is the person who has got a malicious intention. Mens rea is there, and you punish him with the 3 years or 5 years of imprisonment. Let us hope people will learn out of it. Many times technology people need to be put in jail, okay, to understand what need not be done. Okay, they don't understand that law has is like an ethical standard. You are supposed to do it, but technology people, they go berserk, because they feel I have the power. I have been telling this to many technologists, don't do this, you are spoiling your career. These persons who say today that they can de-anonymize and anonymization are putting a challenge to the Data Protection Authority, who will perhaps try to frame a code of practice for anonymization. Okay, so law will do what it can do. People, if they follow it, then law enforcement need not do anything else. Otherwise, we will have this friction as we go along. Okay. Fine. Any other interesting questions? I will be quite happy to answer.
Yes. So one of the questions is, as a DPO of Indian operations of global organization, is it right to say to focus only on PDPB and not have a global approach to building a privacy program? Should we be focusing on region, country-specific privacy framework?
Who will answer?
This,
So my answer is clear there. I have told you that PDPSI looks at classification. I am going to classify my information as GDPR information, CCPA information, Indian information, and I am applying different regulations to them. I am not applying PDPA to GDPR data, and I am not applying GDPR to PDPA data. Again, look at the innovativeness of Indian PDPB. They have realized this problem, and therefore they have provided the Section 37 exemption to the companies, saying that if you are going to process foreign citizens' data exclusively, please put it into a different operating, center or something like that. We will give you exemption from PDPA. So PDPA can be exempted when the processing of the data falls into other categories like GDPR, etc. So therefore, the critical thing here is for technologies to have a proper classification of the system, both discovery of personal data belonging to India, personal data belonging to GDPR, personal data belonging to each countries, and tagging them with appropriate flags, so that you can apply multiple laws. I am not saying that the DPO will handle only one law. Okay, a DPO at the organization level has to look at compliance of the organization. If you maybe in some cases you may need DPO India, DPO GDPR, DPO something else. Okay, if a very large organization is there, create multiple DPOs or have a chief DPO with separate people for different jurisdictions. It may be required because 130 countries are having today the data protection laws, which one single person will be able to comprehend all these laws. So you need specialization for each of the countries, and so it is not one country. I'm not advocating only PDPB compliance. I am saying that you have a framework in which you will be able to comply with multiple laws. Okay.
Yeah, and to add to it, if you are storing that data in the cloud, you need to know which specific regions it is copied or stored into. So if that region has its regional restrictions or requirements from legal and compliance perspective, that also has to be met. So as Navi said also, we need to get into deeper inquisitiveness regarding what personal data we are using, in what form, what purpose, and in what jurisdictional purposes. So the boundary also has to be defined.
Yeah.
Excellent. The next question that we are being asked is, once the PDPB is passed, how are the things going to change around the concept of self-incrimination against the accused?
I don't know in which context you are talking of. Say, there is a criminal law, okay, where there could be evidence, and we say that you cannot force a person to part with evidence to be self-incriminating. Okay. Now, in the compliance of this kind of data protection laws, we are actually talking of civil liabilities. Everywhere we have this data breach notification regulations where the company has to voluntarily declare about data breach, and in HIPAA and other places we know that there is a system where you have to be not only informing the data subjects, you have to actually put it up on your website, you have to report to the DPA. So at the end of it, it is possible that the data protection authority will charge you with administrative fines. So that I think that is what somebody is asking as self-incriminating. But this is part of the compliance regime where you cannot hide the compliance. See, that is the difference between ITA 2000 and this. In ITA 2000, only when a breach is confirmed and somebody has claimed a loss, there is a cause of action, the regulations will kick in. Whereas in Personal Data Protection Act, even when no data breach has happened, non-compliance will result in 4% of fine. So this what people are referring to as self-incrimination. Look at it as confined to civil possibility of administrative fines. It is inherent now in all data protection regulations. I think we have to live with it. A company will have to disclose it. If they don't disclose it and hide it, say you ask any data security persons, they will say research suggests that if a data breach happens today, it will take 6 months for them to actually find it out. Okay, this is what the researchers suggest. But there are also people who, after coming to know of a data breach, they try to suppress it in the fear of this administrative fines. But you cannot suppress this forever, and if you later on come to know that there was a data breach, the liabilities will perhaps be far in more. What GDPR supervisory authorities have been doing, if you don't cooperate, if you are not proactive in disclosing, the penalties will be higher. After all, 4% of the turnover is a huge outer limit, which is also applicable here. In India, 15 crores, 5 crores is not going to be the end of it. So I'm sure that one has to be honest, in good faith, disclose a breach. Particularly if, of course, if you are not confirmed that a breach has happened, that is the time when you provisionally inform the Data Protection Authority. Again, Indian data protection law suggests that you don't have to immediately rush to the media or something like that. There will be an adjudicator, there will be the DPA. If the DPA feels that you have to publicize it, you publicize it. There are many instances where the adjudicator, being a quasi-judicial person, will give you a kind of protection you want. And if you can convince that adjudicator that whatever has happened is not a data breach at all, or the breach harm is very low, it is not sensitive information, not many people have lost, so I have done a harm audit, here is the harm audit report, please let me continue my business without public disclosure. Perhaps there is an opportunity in Indian law because of the quasi-judicial intervention at the earliest stage of data breach related grievance redressal. Okay, this is also important. I would not like to forget it. I would like to mention it in the Schrems 2 kind of situation in the global scenario. Say why US Privacy Shield failed in the eyes of the EU CJ was that the grievance redressal mechanism under the Privacy Shield was not having judicial background. There was a government appointed ombudsman who could take decisions. Okay, whereas in Indian law, there is an adjudicator, there is going to be an appellate tribunal, judicial oversight is there right at the beginning. I am sure that that is a point on which Indian scenario will score above the US Privacy Shield. Hopefully, we will be better off as a privacy compliant nation. Okay, I don't want to talk too much because there are other people. Please excuse me. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.